real consequences for the family. Why? Parenting is about tough and unconditional love. How else does a mother who can't bear to beat her child for doing something wrong bridge this gap between scolding or smacking a child and caring for him? The answer is very often saying, I'm only doing this because I care about you and your interests. And this is how a child is gradually affirmed in his role in the family. When you pay parents, this trust is lost because children, especially at a young age growing up, will start to question the sincerity of their parents' love. And when you put money into the equation, this is worse.
Point, sir.
Let's illustrate in a moment, sir. Already in the status quo, we have kids that say to their parents, you're not coming to my football game because you only care about going to the office and earning money. Now you will have that same housewife who has sacrificed everything for the child tell to her face, you're only smacking me because you care about the money the state will give you for doing the job. And when you do this, it takes families and turns them into mercenary relationships which cannot succeed in achieving the benefits that Team Swaziland wants to talk about.
Does Team Singapore, would Team Singapore rather have children with values or without values?
We would rather them have values, and that's why we stand for so many other alternatives, that parents and schools and teachers can together complement each other to give children these values. You haven't shown us why this policy mechanism in particular is so important. For example, in the Norwegian region of Bergen, this policy was implemented in 2009. The response was quite clear. The parents' union was opposing it just 2 years later because it had torn families apart when every action was worked on the basis of financial return. It made human relationships impossible. But even if you didn't buy this argument, let's take this one step further to the second argument. This hurts children in society by the same yardstick that Team Swaziland talks about. Premise. Where's the money of their policy going to come from? There's a massive opportunity cost. If there's already not enough money to pay teachers in schools and to give them proper training, paying every parent the wage of a teacher multiplies this cost. Now, even if Team Swaziland were to find a way for this money to come about, we argue that if they could find this money, it's better spent in areas that go directly to the child. This is how we teach them things like respect for property. This is how we try to prevent the situation of the London riots, by putting money into school subsidies for those who need it, to cheaper textbooks, to things like school meals and after-school care, or counseling for troubled youth, all of which are problems that are sadly lacking in the developed world. Why is this better than on their side? Because in this policy, we directly allocate the resources we have to the children who are less fortunate. So we don't end up giving money to children or families who already have good parents, who have more than enough money and parents can comfortably stay at home. We give the money to children who are in the situations where they need these resources the most. It's far fairer to use these resources rather than giving them to some rich lady who, by virtue of being unemployed and stays at home to take care of the kids, gets the entitlement of Team Swaziland, and in so doing, denies the poor struggling single mother this entitlement that she would otherwise have gotten through some kind of welfare payment. Our side believes that it is, first of all, not necessary to reward altruism because it's good for its own sake and we should recognize that. Second, that Team Swaziland's policy is really arguing for a blunt mechanism for a very specific problem. And finally, it is our side that builds families. It is our side that targets the specific kinds of youth that Dave talked about in a more precise and hence better way for society. We're very proud to stand in Team Opposition.
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 10 seconds. I'd like to thank the first opposition speaker for his speech, and now please welcome Fanele Mashwama to continue the case for proposition.
despite the fact that she wasn't with him shooting in the gym, where Mrs. Bryant was feeding, clothing, and watching Kobe Bryant's kids. So it's precisely because of this that we support the team line, that home is where the heart is, ladies and gentlemen, and we're very proud to propose. So what is it I'm going to bring in by way of substantive? We're going to look at what this does to women in the developing world, ladies and gentlemen. But before which, let's look at what we heard from first on. So firstly, we've got this question about the destruction of the parent-child relationship, right? He says currently it's based in altruism, and by giving them the money, we somehow destroy this altruistic incentive which existed in the first place. We have two responses to this. Firstly, we don't think the child necessarily needs to be there when the social worker is giving the parent the money, right? That's really not that difficult if you think that's such a big problem. But the second thing, and this is really the where the crux of this issue is, what we're saying is current economic pressures on the parents force them to leave their child alone. And what we do is we relieve these economic pressures by allowing the parent to express the same altruism which you've identified in first, ladies and gentlemen, but express it differently in a way that the parent actually has the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. So then we have this question of this characterization of the type of people who are going to actually fall under our model. We have the terribly rich on one end and the terribly poor on the other hand. We think you miss the vast majority of where we think this case is actually going to lie. We think it lies in this instance where you have one middle-class parent actually going out to work and the other one staying at home, ladies and gentlemen. This is actually where the debate is. So let's look at the extremes which you've described and what happens to them, because we think they're marginal, but they're worth discussing anyway. Firstly, the terribly rich. He identified no problem with this, ladies and gentlemen. He said it continues the way it is for the terribly rich, so it's really not a problem. So let's look at these really poor people, ladies and gentlemen. We think that, so what he argued here is that it's going to commodify them, ladies and gentlemen. And I've already demonstrated our response to this question of unconditional love. Firstly, we don't think that children necessarily need to see this thing, but more importantly, we don't think you can pervert altruism with finance, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing you do is simply give them the means to relieve these economic pressures which exist on them. So then the second thing he told us about was this question of opportunity cost, ladies and gentlemen. What we say is tax the rich some more. It's that simple, and that's where the money is going to come from. And finally, let's look at the question of our model, because they really questioned our model and said, why don't we invest the money in things like after-school care? These things are really important. What we say is, if you accept that parents are really important part of our society, we think they are best suited to actually take care of their children. So we don't have people who are there exclusively for the money. What we have is these people with this altruistic incentive and then the relief on them. And then to the question of the mechanism, we think social workers are very well suited to actually deal with this question, ladies and gentlemen. We evaluate the way orphanages work all the time. So it's really not a question, the question of mechanism, and I'm glad you only spent like 10 seconds on it. So let's look at what Obantu told you and how much of it still stands. Housework is still work, ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult, and this went unchallenged. So what we're saying is they've accepted this. So let's look at the incentives to home building. Sit down. So let's look at the incentives to home building. What Obantu told you is the social cost of poor parenting is too immense. This went unengaged with. We raise bad children when the absence of their parents is real, and they feel it. So what we do is, and I'll take you on this one, don't you accept the fact that when you have parents actually taking care of their children, they come out as better children than the people who would provide the after-school care you so gladly propose.
You just told us that the majority case is the middle-class family. How will this small amount incentivize so many more parents to return to the household?
Okay, so what we're saying is, currently what you have are economic pressures on the family, right? That is, we need to provide for our family. We relieve this pressure when you give the parents the money that a teacher gets. We really don't see why this is so difficult to understand. So where was I? To the question of the social cost. We say government cannot afford to totally ignore these people because they go on to do things like destroy private property and the likes, ladies and gentlemen. It's very natural development. We see this in the question of maternity leave. We think that when we give parents maternity leave, we appreciate the importance of the parent in the child's development, and then we allow them to go there and we have them still get paid. So all we're asking for is an extension of this policy, because they then go on to do arguably more work when the child isn't a toddler, when the child's a teenager, creating things like the problems we see in London, ladies and gentlemen. We told you about the importance of safety and housekeeping, ladies and gentlemen, and this went unengaged. So let's look at my material. How this emancipates women in the developing world. But before which,
would you give a woman with 10 children more money than a parent with 1 child?
Okay, under the current state of affairs, what you have is a woman is unemployed and she has more children, we're going to give her more money. Why is this? Because we accredit, what you call it, importance to the number of children you have. So we really don't see why this is an argument in today's discussion. If you have greater responsibility, yeah, the state gives you more money. It's not a problem. So let's look at the question of the emancipation of women in the developing world. So currently, a lot of Ubuntu's analysis actually lies in the developing world. What we think is the developing world lags with regards to the importance we place on women. Botswana is a really important example of this, ladies and gentlemen. What we think is what we see in Botswana is that there are more women, they contribute more to the economy, but they only hold 70% of the economy's value. Why is this? There are more women in a really agrarian society. The women are typically agriculturalists, right? The women are typically agriculturalists, yet they only hold 30% of the economy's worth. So why is this? This is because men actually have the money. And at the end of the day, it's really about money because money pays bills and it's not altruism. So how does this change under our model, ladies and gentlemen? We think we change this because we think we give the money to the women, and this has two really important consequences for side government. Firstly, they're seen as contributors to the family. So what this means is the man's going to take her more seriously, and that's a really important thing. And the second thing is we think that she's going to be less susceptible to abuse. Why is this? Simply because she's seen as a contributing member to the society. The second thing is that we think the money is going to be spent wiser. If you're constantly engaged, in looking at the problems that are currently facing the house, we lack, say for instance, soap and the likes, we're not going to have a situation where all the money is being spent on the primary breadwinner's interest, take for instance, alcohol, etc. so forth. The person who's in the house and living with all these things is going to be able to better the house. So what does this do to their home environment, ladies and gentlemen? We think we make it better because it's going to be all the things that I want to told you about. It's going to necessarily be safer, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to necessarily be more hygienic, and it's going to necessarily rear the children in a better way. So what have we demonstrated? We've demonstrated that we relieve a really important economic pressure on the children. We think that Singapore actually gave us a massive concession when they said we should put this money in things like after-school care. The people who will be running this after-school care are exclusively incentivized by the monetary incentive. What we have is we combine this altruism, which we realize cannot pay bills under the current state of affairs. I can't say I really love you, therefore we have electricity. It's not how it works, right? That altruism cannot pay bills, and what we do is we relieve this economic pressure, we make women more important in the developing world, and for these reasons we beg you to vote for government.
Time was 7 minutes 42 seconds. I'd like to thank the second proposition speaker for his speech, and now please welcome Robin Koch to continue the case for opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental problem with the case of side proposition is that their case presents to us a problem-solution mismatch. Yes, altruism doesn't pay the bills, but neither does their policy. What pays the bills, what helps parents and what helps children is welfare and targeted policies that help the families who are most in need, the children who are most in need, without hurting families, without imposing a blanket metric. I have two main areas of contention for today. First, who best empowers parents? Second, who best protects and educates the children? First, on parents. Now, our first speaker gave you a wide swathe of policy challenges to them which they haven't really responded to. But first of all, let's kick down this idea of perverting
altruism. We say that their policy does pervert altruism because it places a monetary value on the love a parent gives to the child. It replaces the moral reward for taking care of a child with a financial reward. We say this commodifies parenting, and just like the fact that when countries which institute financial rewards, for donating blood actually experience a drop in blood donations, this policy, we say, incentivizes fewer parents, in some cases, to stay at home and take care of their children. Let's move on to our attacks on policy. They never really gave us a clear criteria, which they would use to tell which parent gets more money and which parent's not. And the second speaker, never really responded to our point of information. We say that this shows that their policy is vastly unfair because they admit that the rich woman with 10 children would get more money than a poor woman with 1 child. This uses money which could have been used to help the poor in a grossly unfair way and reveals the distributive problem that lies at the heart of their case. So we think that until they give us a criterion, they cannot really win this debate. They told us that social workers are trained to figure out whether a parent is parenting a child properly. This is nonsense. Social workers often cannot tell what a parent is doing at home. A parent can show that he's been greatly caring for his child on the visits of social worker when a social worker comes to the house, but maybe loafing around watching television for the rest of the time. That was what my first speaker told you, something they haven't dealt with. So the fact that the parent is at home doesn't mean there's quality of parenting. They told us that they would deceive children and not let them know that their parents were being paid for taking care of them. We say this is fact backwards. Children will know. When they grow up, they will read the newspapers. They will learn in school that their parents are being paid for taking care of them. This argument just doesn't stand. Finally, they told us, that they would find money for their policy by taxing the rich more. Okay, but we say that they are